when I was a child, the country in which I was born. And while many of you know me from Fox News, know my political opinion because you hear me talk about national security and radical Islam and immigration and MS-13 gang and why we need to vet people coming into the country, a lot of you do not know my background as a Christian and my childhood. My passion comes from the experiences that shaped me. You see, I was born and raised in what used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We were open-minded, we were fair, we were tolerant, we were multicultural. We prided ourselves on our multiculturalism. Does this sound familiar so far? We had people come to our country from all over the Middle East because we wanted to share with them the westernization which we had created in the heart of a dictator, dark Middle East. Muslims used to send their children to our country to study because we had built the best universities in the Middle East. They graduated and worked in our economy because we had built the best economy in the Middle East, even though we did not have any oil. Beirut became known as Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. It's amazing how things have changed. Today, Lebanon is known as Hezbollah headquarters, one of the largest terrorist organizations and most lethal terrorist organizations in the world running the country. The Christians went from being 70% in Lebanon to almost 20% today. You see, my 9/11 happened to me in 1975 when radical Islamists blew up my home, burying me under the rubble wounded. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in a hospital bed, going from one surgery to another, I would ask my parents, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels, and they want to kill us. So I learned since I was a young 10-year-old little girl that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town. I ended up leaving the hospital and coming back home, but my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living underground in an 8x10 bomb shelter without electricity, without water, and very little food. And that's where I lived for the next 7 years of my life, from the age of 10 till the age of 17, robbed of my youth. To get some food, we would crawl out under the bombs, and we would dig out different dandelion and different vegetation that grew around our bomb shelter because it was the only greenery we had to eat. To get some water, we would crawl under snipers' bullets to get some water, as we were surrounded by Islamic snipers shooting at us. And every time we left our bomb shelter, we would say our last goodbyes because we did not know if we're going to come back alive or dead just to get a drink of water. I remember at the age of 13, dressing in my burial clothes, in my Sunday best, because I wanted to look pretty when I am slaughtered, knowing that when they come to slaughter me, there would be no one to bury me. A friend of ours had stopped by and he said, Brigitte, I just want you to know that we heard a lot of chatter on the radios and we believe we're going to be attacked tonight. And he said, if I don't see you tomorrow, I wish you a merciful death. And he left. And at the age of 13, I dressed in my Easter dress, sobbing, crying, as my mother combed my long black hair down to my hips. As I begged her, I don't want to die. I'm only 13 years old. Please do something. I don't want to die. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we sat in the corner of our bomb shelter. And my father opened up his Bible and started reading from Psalms. I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil, for thou art with me. And my parents said to me, we lived a long life. You're an only child. You're a young child. We just want you to run. When they come to slaughter us, we'll create a distraction. We just want you to run towards Israel. Go to the Israeli border. Run as fast as you can and don't look back. You see, we knew if we run to the Jews and beg for help, the Jews are not going to kill us because we had more shared values with them than we had with the radical Islamists. Thank Thank God I did not have to make that decision that night, because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and set up artillery bases around our town to keep us alive, and created the security zone and started working with the Christians, trying to help the Christians protect themselves. And we continued living in our bomb shelter till 1982, when Israel came into Lebanon, invaded Lebanon, working with the Christians in Lebanon, helping them take back their democracy and kick out the radical Islamic element that had taken control of the country at that time. By the time 1982, when Israel came in, we had 11 Islamic terrorist organizations operating out of Lebanon, including the PLO. And that's how we came out of the bomb shelter and back to rebuilding our lives. The same refugees that we had taken in, the Palestinian refugees, had destroyed our country. And we refused to read the writing on the wall when they used to say, we hate you, we don't like you, we want to take over your country, we want to create a base from which to fight Israel, kill the Jews, and throw them into the sea. And they were able to do it because we didn't believe they actually meant it. We buried our heads in the sand, pretending if we ignore the problem, it'll go away. And by the time we woke up, it was too late. I ended up coming out of the bomb shelter and back to rebuilding my life. At the age of 20, I moved to Israel and I became news anchor for world news in the Middle East, covering world events and talking about world events. And that was in the 80s, from 1984 till 1989. And as I read the news night after night about terrorist activities happening around the world, I started realizing there was a pattern developing. The name of the perpetrators were always Islamic: Ahmed, Muhammad, Hussein, Ali. The name of the victims were always Westerners, Christians and Jews: Terry Waite, Terry Anderson, Colonel Higgins, the Achille Laura, the TWA flights, the Pan Am flights, and I can go on and on. As a matter of fact, in my first book titled Because They Hate, I have pages upon pages where I list all the attacks against the West, where America hit the snooze button and went back to sleep because we did not believe what our enemies were saying. And I learned very quickly that what I used to think was a regional problem between a majority Islamic Middle East trying to either kill or expel the minority Christians and Jews had become a worldwide problem.
लाइक और शेयर ठोक दीजिए महाकाल का से दबा के लाइक और शेयर ठोक दीजिए